Senator, I'm on Zoom. Oh, mute. There we go. There we go. Well, welcome everybody, and thank you for joining me this evening for the spring 2022 broadband update. As you know, I'm Brian Pettyjohn, state senator here in Sussex County, covering from the Delaware-Maryland line west of Bridgeville all the way to the pier at the dock at Massey's Landing. So welcome to everybody from the 19th district and from other areas within Delaware. I am joined this evening by Jason Clark, who is our Chief Information Officer with the Department of Technology and Information. Jason, welcome.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
And Chris Cohen, also from the Department of Technology and Information. And he has been one of the driving forces behind helping to get this done at DTI. He's been taking a lot of the phone calls from different people, from us as legislators, calling them every other day, sometimes several times a day, asking when we can get some of these addresses serviced. So Chris, thanks for joining us as well.
Thanks, Senator.
Yep. Okay, I thought introduce everybody, and I think Jason, you have a slide deck that you'd want to share.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll go through a little presentation and then open it up for any questions and answers.
Okay. I think I gave you permission to share here. Now, as everybody's in here, I just want to remind everybody, if you're viewing this via Facebook, if you can go to the main page, instead of like if somebody shared it to one of the Bridgeville sites, go to my main Senate page where this is being broadcast and type your comments there, your questions, so that we can address them. I've also got the YouTube link up as well. So we also have the Q&A chat that is here on Zoom if you're joining us for the webinar.
I just wanted to confirm you see the presentation mode?
I do not.
Oh.
There we go. I see your desktop.
Okay. I'll go ahead and. How about now?
There we go.
All right. All right. So yes, as the senator mentioned, my name is Jason Clark. I'm the Chief Information Officer here at the Department of Technology and Information. If you're not aware of our group, that's sort of by design, I suppose. We are not a public-facing agency. We actually service the state agencies within our state. As it relates to this particular project, the primary reason that we are on board is because we are definitively the subject matter experts when it comes to networking, routing, and fiber as we connect all the state agencies, and have been at this for quite some time as broadband has expanded services over time. Where we start with broadband is 10 plus years, and you're fortunate to have Senator Pettyjohn representing you, a district that is heavily impacted by the lack of broadband wired service to the homes, as many of you, I'm sure, can appreciate and are joining us tonight to understand when you will receive service. The governor back in October made a designation of $110 million of federal funding that came in under the ARPA American Relief Plan Act. Prior to that, with the previous administration as well, there was CARES relief funding that came in, and there was an allocation of that made, and several hundred homes connected under that particular program, as well as us driving towards putting together a strategic plan for how we would deal with this across Delaware. That strategic plan was the first time that all stakeholders were consulted in the process. And we had representation from your very own Senator Pettyjohn from the legislature, along with many others that represent the rural areas of our state that have yet to be connected by the service providers we have. As you can see on this list, we consulted with Newcastle County, Higher Education, Sussex County, Kent County, our Delmarva Power, who plays a large role in the expansion that has occurred to this point, with dark fiber throughout our state, charter schools, and the list goes on, to really get a feel for what we needed to do to close the gap and move forward. That resulted in what you see here on the right-hand side of a map for the first time that really depict the broadband deserts that exist in our area. And when I say broadband deserts, I'm referring to our unserved areas. And as you can see by this map, we have clumps clearly where that we have just plain unserved areas. Specifically here, as you see on the western side of both southern Kent and Sussex County, as well as pockets up around the Route 9 corridor in Kent leading into Newcastle County. Beyond that, we have a lot of individualized areas. Those are rural areas where the providers to date, and we have 4 in our state that are franchise vendors: Atlantic Broadband, Mediacom, Comcast, and Verizon. Those 4 have franchise agreements with the Public Service Commission. They provide service along with other providers, but they have the license, right, for the areas. And they, as you can see, have service around all of these pockets. But they were unable or chose not to provide service in those spaces because of the cost to run fiber, what we refer to as the last mile. And if any of you have inquired on your own, I'm sure you've received quotes, whether that's $10,000 to run down a driveway, whether it's $50,000 to address a pretty far setback if you have a farm, or if service is down the end of the road and not even running down your street, quotes over $100,000. And that's what we're really talking about with this funding. We are removing that particular conversation from the table and addressing those costs with the vendors, so that whether you live in a community with 600 homes and you pick up the phone and call for service, you get it within 2 weeks. We want that same experience for the families that have homes that's both residential and or business, for that matter, where there might be, 2 locations on a mile-long stretch of road. We still want that same service capability to be presented to you. And so we're paying to have those that fiber run down those roads and presented to each of those addresses that we have on file. We have 11,600 homes that we identified. We have since identified more, and I'll touch on that as we talk about the broadband.delaware.gov website. That is something that you can go to. You can get updates on our journey to this point, the latest information on where we are today, as well as the mapping portion of this. And I'll touch on that in a moment, but the current mapping function allows you to see what provider is generally in that area, but obviously not serving your residents if you are in one of these blue broadband deserts. It also gives you the opportunity, if your address is not listed on our list of 11,600, it gives you the opportunity to go ahead and put it in, and we will include it in this particular project. That's not to say you would have been excluded from this exercise. As I said, we're going to run down roads. The intent is to be able to service all homes on that road. But at the moment, if your address is not there, you do have the ability to add it, and we will include you in this particular project. We recently, on March 17th, announced the awards. We had 3 vendors that applied for the grant that we put forward. This particular grant requires fiber to the home, fiber to the premise. It is a scenario where the service has to be able to support 100 megabits per second download and 20 megabits per second upload, with the capacity to go to 100 symmetrical, which is what we feel and federal government recognizes as well will be kind of a standard within the next couple of years or sooner. So on March 17th, we made the announcement. As you can see, Comcast received a significant portion of the homes. They have built out fiber over the last 10 years, have really made a push into some of the underserved areas, and we're the closest provider, followed by Verizon and then Mediacom. This particular deployment and what we did here from a strategy perspective is called an edge out strategy. So as you can see, if we have a blue pocket, for this exercise, let's look at Comcast in the Sussex County area. You can see that their presence is there. What we looked at is you're already there. You have fiber and infrastructure in that area. Close in the gap. Serve the rest of the homes that are in your surrounding area or within your area. And that applied to all 3 vendors. And that's how these awards ultimately were issued. There's a couple of supplemental programs that are in play as well. During the pandemic, we had a real situation in ensuring that our students had the ability to connect when they were forced to school from home. One of our exercises to achieve that was to look at services for those individuals that could qualify. And at this point, we have 25,700 plus students who are utilizing either a MiFi device, a fixed wireless service, or in some cases where there was a wired connection and it was an issue of affordability. The state has stepped up to cover that particular initiative as well. We are going to continue that program because the deployment of all these services will take about 36 months to complete. And so we need to bridge that gap. And this is one way to do that specifically for the students. I mentioned it, but what we were targeting here is that every household and business have the capacity and availability of wireline service. That is what was built into the federal grant funds that we received in the first place. What I mean is that when we put out our grant, there are a number of technologies. I'm sure you've been introduced to various satellite forms and other fixed wireless type of services to provide broadband service to your home. The federal guidelines required that we pursue a wireline connection to the home. And so that's what drove the requirements for what we put out in the grant process. I mentioned a moment ago on the Delaware, on the broadband.delaware.gov website, there is an opportunity for you to look at our broadband hub. That's what we are using. It's a GIS-based geospatial map. It has all the addresses for you. You can search to see if your home or business address has internet service. Obviously, if you're searching, you're looking to see the fact that you do not. You can look at your specific address to determine whether or not it's on our list. You have the ability to add your address if it is not, and you can look at some of the other features that we have. Next week, we plan to actually showcase the awards. So you will be able to go in and not just see your address and whether or not you're on the list, but if your address is on the list and we've already included it in the project, you will see which vendor will supply service to you. District 19 is primarily serviced by Comcast, followed by Verizon, with a few Mediacom connections towards the eastern portion of the district. And so those details will be offered up here in the next week as we load that data now that we have started the statement of work process with each of the vendors. It's our goal as we go through that as well to be able to provide continuous updates. So there are some connections that are within range where the service runs down the road. It's a ditch witch type exercise to get it to the home. Those can happen somewhat sooner, a little bit easier to perform than say a scenario where boring under particular roadways has to occur, or we have to coordinate with the electric grids to utilize pole and aerial runs that make the most sense depending on the areas. Here's kind of a heat map that you can see today by going to the Broadband Hub. As you can see, there are a significant number of homes that will be serviced. I did the map out of the original 11,600 addresses. Just over 20%, 20.5% fall within District 19 in the 19th district. And the purple on here indicates locations that we already have on file. So that was 2,151. And Senator Pettyjohn, you have a fairly active community, obviously engaged. They've already been on and shared with us 226 additional addresses. Now, as you can see by the map where those addresses fall, many are very close to clusters that were already on file. And so we would have expected to serve them, but we want to make sure that we cross our T's and dot our I's. And so this opportunity ensures that we can provide continuous information to each and every address that's interested along the way. And that's really it on where we stand today. I will stop sharing here, and I think maybe we open up to discussion.
I appreciate that, Jason. And yeah, you're right. We have a very active constituency, and it's part of it is the outreach that we've been doing for quite some time. Letting people know, look, we're looking to expand broadband here in Delaware. This is a priority. It's not only been a priority of mine, but it's been a priority of the last two administrations here in Delaware to accomplish that. And luckily, with the funding that we were able to get from the federal government, we're looking to be the first state that has pretty much universal connectivity for every business, every home, every address within our state. So, there's an advantage of being a small state, and what we're able to
There's an
accomplish
advantage to being a small state. There's an advantage that we have been at this and had support such as yours and others for quite some time. We've tried a number of technologies and solutions.
Mhm.
Not all of them have scaled the way we need them to. So we're at a unique point in time where we have all the ingredients to be the first state, as you described, to close this gap. And Chris, as you mentioned, spearheading it for us here at DTI, been engaged at multiple levels, but we work closely with a number of other states as well. And they wish they had the scenario we have. We don't have mountains to cross. We don't have rocky soil to trudge through. We are at a point now where with that federal money, we get to have all the ingredients necessary to make this happen. And that's what we're aiming to execute on. And the first step in that is providing access to each of the homes as you described.
Yep, and that's greatly appreciated. Any of the attendees that have questions, go ahead and put them in the chat box or in the Q&A. If you're watching through Facebook, go ahead and put your comments or your questions in there as well. In some of the,
I see one. It referenced 36 months. So that's what we anticipate, and that's what we put within the constraints of the process. And I'm referring to the grant process. So each of the vendors had to commit that they would be able to complete this in the timeline allotted. That's also when we have access to the money. So both pieces coincide. We would like to finish sooner. Again, that will be dependent on a number of factors, but we expect to have, and we've already have crews laying fiber. There is work already being done around the permitting process. We have been working with these vendors, it mentioned since October, but all the vendors that have participated in the grant also participated as stakeholders as we put together the strategic plan. So they knew from the very beginning that we were going to pursue this edge out strategy. It was the most economical approach for our state to pursue. And as a result, they are up to speed on what addresses they need to close in and the engineering behind it. And so that gives us another leg up on moving quickly. And Chris is currently working with the vendors at the moment to complete the statements of work. That's the actual projects that will take place on their behalf, and kind of the milestones along the way that we will check off. But you will start to see within the next couple of weeks crews on the road. Whether that's your specific address or not, again, we will update the websites along the way. As I mentioned, we have 3 different vendors that are participating. So ideally, we will see all 3 performing work immediately.
Good. And I think that kind of answers the next question that was out there from Glenn as well. And Glenn is a freelancer with Delaware State News about the timeline for project completion. And I think we're looking to have everything done in 36 months, but some people are going to start to get the service quicker than others, some, within the next, possibly several weeks, or there have been addresses that have been taken care of here over the last several months as well. Some of the addresses along 404 between Georgetown and Bridgeville, I know there was a major build out there. There was a build out along Old Furnace Road between Georgetown and Seaford. So we have been taking care of addresses, as some of these program monies come in, but this big block of federal money is where we're going to get the rest of it done.
Yep. And I see a question around Elon Musk and satellites. That Starlink is the what's being referenced there. Absolutely, that is something that has come into play. We actually have some employees within our agency who have that as a service that live in Sussex County. That is not something that we could go after with these grant funds that came from the federal government. As I mentioned, there were qualifying requirements, one of which is a wireline connection to the home. So that precluded us from looking into other services such as that satellite service. That being said, as time goes on, that provides obviously some of the competitive nature that will provide opportunities for people to consider alternatives along the way, which is good. Competition will help drive some of the pricing and other things along time. At the moment, we are not offering multiple services. I've gotten that question a number of times. You know, we can't afford to have all three vendors extend their services to each and every address in the state. What we're looking at is to address those homes that have nothing today and to provide a wireline connection that meets the requirements that we put out.
And I think that's important. That's an important point. There are some people that are upset with their current providers, and they're thinking that with this program, they're going to be able to get, company B. I'm not going to name any companies. You know, they've got company A right now. They're not happy with the service. They're not happy with the price. They think, oh, we can bring company B in now, and they're going to be able to serve our addresses. That's not what this is for. Specifically, this is to get service to people who don't have wired service as it is now. And that's something that's actually part of the federal grant is to get service. It doesn't, and it's a wired service. You know, Starlink is not a wired service. It's still at the mercy of radio frequency bands. And as you add people to Starlink, and as we saw with some of the other technologies that we had, as you add more people to it, the service starts to degrade and over time because there's only a fixed amount of bandwidth that you can transmit over the air. So, the wired is the way to go. Wired is that future proof. It can be built out in the future. They can add more equipment onto it. They have, with cable modems, for example, they've come out with new standards for compression, which is allowing faster speeds without ripping everything out and putting new stuff back in. So that's what we're interested in doing in terms of moving forward here in the future. So we answered that.
I saw a question. We will can put the contact information back up. At the moment, I see one here around monthly costs for these services. The idea here is, like I said in the beginning, whether you live in a community with 300 homes or you're a single home on a mile stretch of road, you should be able to go to any one of these vendors' website and take a look at the packages that they offer, select one, and that's the price that will be for you. You will not pay a different rate than anyone else that they serve. And all three is part of this process, just so I'm a longtime Delawarean, live in the state, kind of interested where my tax dollars go. All these vendors did a 25% match as part of their grant application. So even though you see the awards in the millions that are being offered to them, that's 75% of the total cost that's been identified for their particular build out. They are covering the other 25%. And if you happen to have a scenario where you or someone that's a low income family, each of these providers also provide and are required to provide a low income rate. So groups like Comcast comes to mind at the moment, that they have a net essentials program that's pretty widely marketed. It's like $10 a month, and it provides that internet connection so that folks can work.
Yep, and that was a question that came up in the chat window as well. And to clarify on Kathy's question, I'm not sure if she put that up as we were talking about it or not, about the choice of providers. I will say that there are some areas within Sussex County where there are multiple providers. But that is a decision that the individual companies have to make on their own. That's something they look at the pro forma, they look at the density of people in those areas. And if they choose to go through and overlay their services on top of another incumbent service, that's up to them. There's nothing that is holding them back from doing that from a governmental standpoint. We don't offer exclusive areas of service. I don't believe, correct me if I'm wrong, and I think we actually have somebody from the Public Service Commission who is watching this tonight. But if a company wants to come in and overlay their service somewhere else, we've got that going on right now in the southeastern corner of the state. We have that in the Long Neck area where you have two providers that are overlaying each other in some cases as well. Yep.
I saw a question here about Mediacom and unsatisfactory at many times. We've seen this question come up. One thing I want to point out, if if I go back to the slide, you'll see the cost associated with MediaCom. We've heard this numerous times. MediaCom, Chris, if I recall correctly, well over 10,000 customers that they serve across our Sussex County. One of the things that we've heard is they have been servicing a number of customers and may not have had the opportunity to invest in their infrastructure and backbone to address the capacity challenges that come forth with serving more and more customers at a quick rate. Part of what they applied for and part of what was available was for capacity. And so the number of customers being served by MediaCom in this grant process is lower than the other two providers. But what one piece that is overlooked at times when just looking at these numbers is that they are going to be making an investment in capacity. And as they address that capacity, it will actually provide better service for their legacy customers as well. And so that's really making investments in the infrastructure, the backbone that provides the bandwidth to the homes. And I think that's very important and something that if you already have them today, or if you know someone who has them and have heard, various experiences, know that we heard that as well, and that was included in their grant process to improve their service overall.
That's good to know, and for some of the customers that do have MediaCom, that's definitely welcome news from them. We've got a hand raised that I think somebody wants to ask a question. Oh, nope, she put her hand down. Barbara, if you want to ask your question again live through talking, just go ahead and put your hand back up and I'll allow you to talk. Nobody right now. Okay. She did ask a question here in the Q&A though about when people aren't happy with the cable, they want internet only. When you switch to internet, the cost goes up.
Yeah, so I think what's being referred to there is, cable TV in general has gone through a real shift over the last 5 years. The concept of streaming services is really in play now at this point. My kids hardly watch cable TV. I mean, they watch YouTube and other forms of streaming. So we see that there's between Apple TV, Netflix, Amazon, right? All the different services that come into play and that now offer some of the more local type TV, whether that's sports, news, et cetera, you can get through these services as well. And so there's a little bit of a shift where at one point in time, people would always get the phone, the cable TV, as well as internet. It was a three-piece package and there was a price for it. I think what's being referenced here is the fact that even if you had all three pieces and now you just go down the internet, the price doesn't change significantly. And that's because the majority of their service, the majority of these vendors' investment is in that internet backbone. And it's actually delivering all three in some cases. And so it's really not that big of a shift for them. And as a result, we don't see a huge decrease in the price.
Yeah, and you're passing, and I think there's a couple technical people that are on here. Everything's data packets now anyway. Whether it's a voice, whether it's a video packet, or whether it's streaming packet or this Zoom webinar, everything is data packets that are being transmitted through. Since they made the big switch to digital for the video, one, it allowed them to put more. It freed up some bandwidth for them to expand other services. But two, it made everything go from an RF based source to a packet switch source, which is a whole lot more. It helps their system. It's more efficient, and everybody's gone to that. So, well, now we've got a really technical question on here about signal to noise ratio. I think the bottom line is to this question from Joseph. Yes, they're trying to get the signal out to some of these remote areas, but when it gets out there, it needs to be of a good quality signal as well. It's got to be of a good speed. This person's a FiOS customer, so they're seeing a lot of signal strength issues and where they are. I think he's pretty much asking, okay, let's get it out there, but once we do get the signals out there, especially some of the more remote places, that are at the end of the runs, that it's a good quality as well.
Yeah. So just to speak to the quality, and I don't know that this provides additional confidence or insurance or not, but one of the components to this particular grant process and administering this grant is we are working with a vendor, CTC. They are a national group that engages on networking and fiber related efforts across the state. They will actually be going out after the work is performed and confirming that it meets the requirements that are a part of this particular grant process and that these vendors have signed up for. So it's a little bit of an independent verification that will take place and allow us to close out these requests before we pay the vendor for these jobs that are being performed.
Okay.
So ideally, we will have a second set of eyes, I guess is what I'm getting at, to really take a look at the service that's being provided.
All right. We did have one question come through on Facebook when it comes to wired. Are they talking about coax? Are they talking about fiber to the home, coax to the home, a hybrid solution? I have a feeling it's going to be hybrid depending on the location, but can we kind of address that specifically?
Yeah, Chris, you want to answer that one just in the context of the grant?
Yeah, it's fiber to the home. So that was new for Comcast and for MediaCom, and that was part of the requirements. That was a preference from the feds. We put that in our grant, and so they will be doing fiber to the home or fiber to the premise, however you want to refer to it as, which is a big switch from what Comcast their current approach, which is called a hybrid fiber coax, where they'll run fiber to a node, and then from the node they'll run it to the homes with the coax. This is all fiber to the home, so we're excited about that. I will say that Comcast did give themselves about a 10% variance there, when it made more sense if it was faster for them to extend coax. We approved that. But like I said, it's limited to about 10% of their deployment. The bulk of it's going to all be fiber to the home. So, which I think is a first for in the nation for them to do that. So we're excited about that.
Kind of makes me want to move to build a house and go to an area that's got the new, because people that have had it for a long time, we've got the coax in the ground here, so. It's nice that they're getting that kind of future-proof solution out there. And look, on the technical side, the cable modem, it's kind of shared bandwidth with everybody that's on that node, but the fiber to the premise, it's your dedicated bandwidth. So that's great for those individuals out there, and it's good to hear that Comcast is stepping up and doing that as well. We've got another Facebook question. I live west of Laurel and have no cable. We have to use a tablet hotspot. Is there any cable going to come out this way anytime soon? I've seen old cable east of Laurel being replaced with fiber. So I think, again, we're talking, the answer to that is yes. And there's been some other questions about timeframes as well. Again, the timeframes, the areas that are going to be working are going to be on DTI's website. In terms of specific timeframes for specific areas, is that going to be on the website, or is it going to be more of once you get the kind of the construction schedule from the contractors, it's going to be, okay, this is where we're going next type of thing?
Yeah, that's our goal right now. Next week, we'll be able to populate the addresses that are on our list with which service provider will ultimately provide the service to them. As each one of these statement of works is completed and the crews are launched, we will then start to update those addresses with work has begun and here's an expected completion date.
Okay.
And that's be the process that we go through from a website and communication.
Okay. Let's see here. Matt, were there any more questions that have come through on Facebook that you've seen? No, I don't see anything on there.
Sorry, I was juggling between screens there.
There is one question,
but I don't see it now. So.
Will they be digging to run those lines? Will there be changes to established landscapes such as gardens, sheds, driveways?
So yeah, I mean, it's definitely a possibility. I can tell you that we've done well over 300 at this point. We have definitely had some customers that have had their yards impacted. I mean, as you can imagine, some of these addresses, perhaps some of your own, have pretty far setbacks. They have to make their way through certain areas to get the lines to the home. What I can tell you is that they recognize the relationship we have with them. This is a large project for all three vendors. This is not this is more than they've ever kind of encountered, kind of in a one-time example. And so they are very accommodating to our request to go back out and to fix any potential turfing or otherwise that have transpired. And I know we've had a couple of customers to date that have kind of followed up with us, followed up with the vendor, didn't feel like they got a satisfactory answer. We followed up, and those vendors sent out yard teams to address that. So we feel that we will be in a good position, and we've been at this a little while with them as well. So any mistakes should be corrected.
All right. Tara has a question. Will this hardline connection paid through federal grants put the companies who have been working in the past to connect everyone on line of sight and other hybrid systems out of business?
So I don't know which vendors. I mean, I can tell you that obviously we have made investments in other vendors over time. I think one that comes up regularly in these conversations, especially in Sussex County and Southern Kent County, is fixed wireless that was being provided by BlueServe. So if that is a line of sight type of company that you're referencing, they are a competitor in this market space. Obviously, that's a choice that the customers will have to make, in the sense of, do you want a wireline connection? Does that seem more stable to you than what you're receiving from, say, a fixed wireless or what's being offered at this time? It's not our intent to create a competitive market. As the senator mentioned, our intent here is to provide wireline access that doesn't otherwise exist today. And yeah, there will be other services in the mix. I mean, there are obviously other providers in the satellite industry as well that have a number of customers in these areas.
And I'm sure there are going to be applications for the fixed wireless applications as well, especially when you're looking at the agricultural area. You've got connected agriculture equipment, fixed agriculture equipment, things like irrigation pivots, things like that you don't necessarily want to run a line out there. That could probably be better served by a fixed wireless type of thing. So I'm sure there's going to be applications for those as well.
Yeah, so if that's what we're talking about, is maybe connecting a farm or what it may be. I mean, the upside to something like this is you would have a wireline connection to your primary router, and from there you could do line of sight or other services, and you have that strong backbone and that connectivity to serve those other pieces of equipment or services that might be connecting within your landscape.
Yeah. Sherry Long has a question. I'm going to go ahead and get you on there to talk. Sherry, you can go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Thank you. Do I have a 2-minute clock? Just kidding.
I will give you as long as you need, as long as it's not more than 2 minutes and 5 seconds.
Okay, very good. So this isn't technical. I am sitting in my home, and I don't consider myself out in the boondocks or whatever you want to call it. However, this has been ongoing with Comcast from the time that we've moved here, and it was a new property when we did. They've run lines more times than I can count, and I don't want you to tell me you have to run another one, because I just got a new driveway from the last one that left a hole. But anyway, I can be sitting within 12 feet of where my cable box is, or that modem thing, whatever you call it. I told you this wasn't going to be technical, and I have dead zones. I can go from one side of my house to the other, and I can do a Zoom. And anybody that's on here that knows me knows that I do those quite often. And if I move the wrong way with my hand or my head, I'm told that I have an unstable connection, and I can be the only one in the house and maybe only have 2 of my computer screens on at that point, and maybe one of my cell phones. But anyway, how do we fix that? What do we do that would correct having I mean, they would give me new boxes whenever they first started. Now, mind you, this has been over 20 years that this has been going on. And they would say, well, that was a batch of boxes that was old. Well, we've had multiple reasons. One of them, they said there was water that was holding in the lines up on the pole. So we've gone through multiple different things. So I believe in troubleshooting. In my nursing career, you learn as a MASH nurse, troubleshoot, find the cause and fix it. I haven't found the cause. I haven't fixed it. And we've done this multiple times. Is there anything that y'all maybe have found with this? Oh, my 2 minutes up.
Yeah, I don't know, Chris, you want to weigh in, but gut reaction on that is we'd have to probably understand your home when you indicate that some rooms are supportive and others are not. Doing some sort of speed test or connection test from each one of those to understand connectivity, whether or not something's blocking it. There's also some capabilities with respect to the routers these days and to create jump points or extensions that you can plug into an outlet, and it will help boost that signal throughout the home. That is maybe one option. You mentioned something, though, that this has been going on for 20 years. That leads me to wonder if you have copper in the ground. You mentioned something about water. I don't know. There's a multitude of variables, unfortunately, that could come into play. But I think the first place would be to look within the home and see if there's any obstructions that would potentially be affecting that. Chris, I don't know. Have you had these come up in the past?
I mean, when you're wireless within the home, I don't know, Sherry, do you have a metal roof? Is there any metal structures can impede wireless signals? I would say send your name, your address into the senator. He'll forward it on to us, and we'll have a conversation with Comcast. I'll put it on. So happy to do that.
I'll get my senator's information so I can send him my information.
Excellent.
Okay,
I'm sure Sherry's going to send me a text message in about 5 minutes. So
perfect, and just forward it on. We'll have the conversation.
Okay, very good.
Thanks,
Sherry. Yep. Okay. We do have a couple Q&A. A couple Q&A question came in. Jason, Chris. Let's see. Is the state providing money to cable companies to expand their services? If so, is the state requesting anything of companies regarding pricing, etc.?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, there's a 25% match. We are not asking them to provide any additional services. It is the services that they currently offer. They all have a multitude of programs, different bandwidth levels, from your typical household connection to commercial type household connections, depending on what you want to pursue. If the question is in reference to whether or not prices will go down for all customers because of the investment that we're making, the answer is no. This is about addressing that last mile. It is about addressing the fact that putting fiber in the ground to these homes that are in these pockets have not been justifiable investments for the companies themselves. And so we are removing that part of the discussion and saying, I don't care if it's justifiable. We're going to cover the cost. Give these homeowners and businesses an opportunity to connect to your service at the rates that everyone else can.
Yeah. And Davis from Holly Hill North up in Newcastle County put a comment on Facebook. Internet vendors need to have better customer service and listen to the customers and understand where the possible breakpoints are. And I think with the newer technology, replacing a lot of copper in the ground with fiber optics, we're gonna solve a lot of these issues with moisture getting into the lines. I mean, that's something ever since they started putting cables in the ground that we've had issues with. So we've got Michelle that has her hand raised. Michelle, if you will go ahead and unmute yourself, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Hi, I live in an area that's covered by the free lunch program. So during COVID, we were provided with grants to cover our internet service. And I'm wondering if we do get broadband to our service, will Comcast or Mediacom also provide those opportunities for people that live in rural areas that are covered by the free lunch program?
Chris, you want to address that? Because there are
Yeah, they have the internet. Yeah, a number of programs. They have the Internet Essentials program through Comcast, which is $10 a month for service. So that will be an option. We have the Connect Delaware students where it's a subsidy that we work with our Department of Education and all of the school districts, where if your student is SNAP TANF, they're eligible for either a subsidy for paying for Comcast service or a MiFi device through Verizon or AT&T. So there's multiple programs there. I anticipate you see even more programs from the federal government focused in on students.
So we've already seen some, even beyond students, the Federal Communications Commission, FCC, as well as the NTIA, all of them are putting together programs in that same light, where they will either provide a subsidy for the connection, but also what is coming out of this is as we connect more and more areas that did not have access before, there's investments being made in what they refer to as digital equity or literacy, which is really trying to help individuals get a device. So there's a subsidy for a device, but all of these things have to be applied for by the individual. It is not something that the state of Delaware will be participating in. We can help with the communication and advertising that these programs are available, but it is an individual application process. But the federal government is pursuing a number of initiatives, recognizing internet connectivity really as a utility that is being used not just for work and education as we've gone through with the pandemic, but when you think about telemedicine and a number of other services that have really increased in volume quickly over this time, along with public safety, it is a need that they want to push out, and so there's a lot of money going towards it.
Yeah, Jason, I saw a report a couple of weeks ago, maybe about a month ago, that telemedicine in the United States has advanced about 15 years in the course of 24 months. Yeah. And telemedicine is a huge part of what especially rural area residents are getting out of the expanded internet access. Somebody sent me an email with a question. That's one thing that I wasn't checking. So providers are still quoting customers thousands of dollars to run their services to their homes and businesses now. Some of us have signed contracts with Verizon. Let's see, they're charging me over $5,000 to run a line to my house. They didn't tell me that this program was happening. What should we do? So is this something Comcast, is this a disconnect with some of the providers that people are entering into these contracts and paying these large amount of monies when kind of relief is really right around the corner?
Yeah, Jason, I can take this one. We know that there was this like kind of shift or this timing of when we did the awards versus their current business processes and practices. What we have done is they are both Comcast and Verizon are large companies, need to communicate out to their various sales teams, construction teams in terms of this program that is occurring. I can say that we've had some recent projects where a constituent has paid for it. We were able to get the vendor to refund those money, and then the actual construction will be covered under the grant. So I think that answered the question, but if they're in a situation where they have a question or they've paid it, send us your contact information.
Yeah, send us your contact information, your address, and when you engaged in that particular contract. If you have a contract number, obviously be helpful as well. And we can follow up with our vendors and ensure that we get it covered under the program. Okay,
very good. I think we are caught up with, let's see, I got a text message question. Brian, am I available to get cable with this grant? It would save me $40,000 if I want cable. I know where this person is. They're on Cedar Lane in Georgetown area. I know that they have Comcast going by their residence. It's just a long lane that they're going up. So I think the answer to that, Tim, is yes. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, Yeah, the longest driveway that I'm aware of is in Kent County, and it's a mile long. So
Okay.
yes, and
And
they're getting and they're getting
Quincy's not a mile long.
service.
Yeah.
No, so yeah, absolutely. This would the grant would cover this.
Yep. Okay. Anybody else that's on Zoom world, if you have a question to ask, please raise your hand there and we'll get to you. Yeah, Facebook, text. Yeah. Oh, wait a second. Facebook, even though it would seem to be a duplication of effort, are there plans for Verizon and Comcast to deploy fiber capabilities to the same area? This would allow some competitive pricing between providers. I think we addressed that already. Some companies are choosing to do that, and that's a business decision on their own. That's not something that we're supporting with the grants through this, but there are areas within Sussex County that I know of where you have another provider coming in where an incumbent provider has been there for a long time. Okay. Matt, are we all caught up?
I believe we are, yes.
Okay. Well, Jason, Chris, and Matt, this is Matt Revel down here, depending on where you are. He's kind of in the bottom right corner on mine. Matt is our communications person for the Senate Republican Caucus. He's the one that does all our nice, pretty newsletters and gets our press releases out and, design the nice logos that we got. So, and he's also kind of been keeping his eye on the different social media platforms and relaying messages to me. So thank you all for your time tonight, Jason and Chris. Chris, we're going to miss you. But look, this is a big deal. This is something that a lot of us have been pushing for a decade or more. And, we're just happy to see that the visibility has come up with this, on the federal side. We were fighting the federal side for a long time. They are telling us that we're not a rural area and we don't qualify. Even though, you go out and drive 2 minutes and all you see is farm fields. But this federal grant that came out of ARPA and of the infrastructure plan recognized a lot of this and is fixing this broadband issue that we have here in Delaware. So, Chris, Jason, any closing remarks?
No, just look forward to it. I included our contact information. If you want to send us an address, if you have a question, we have a couple of team members that are going to be supporting this particular project, staying on top of the vendors from a project management aspect. And I also included the link for our broadband.delaware.gov website. Please check it out. We will continue to provide updates there as well. And as I said earlier, we will give you specific information about your address as we get that information in.
Very good.
Great.
All right.
Thanks,
Thank you,
everyone.
everybody.
Thank you.
Again, take care. And any questions, email Jason or Chris, or people have my email as well, and I'll make sure I send it to the right person. So everybody have a great night. Thanks for joining.
Thank you.
All right, take care.